everybody, welcome to the show. Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. I am the homeschool mom behind Raising A to Z, this informational and inspirational YouTube channel all about homeschooling. This is our homeschool puppy Mac. He has apparently decided to join me for cuddles today. Today I want to talk about something that a lot of parents have a hard time with, and that is determining what grade level their kids are at. And that's hard because sometimes age, grade level, and maturity don't line up in a nice, neat order to give you a magical number. And so I want to talk a little bit about how that works, how to determine what level is best for your kids, how we do it in our home, and hopefully just kind of encourage you that you don't have to necessarily follow the traditional public school system when it comes to setting those expectations about grade level and ages. But before we do that, I need to take a minute to thank our sponsor for this video, the STEM Kids Portable Microscope. This is just an absolutely great little microscope. Yeah, it's pretty cool, eh? This awesome mini microscope is perfect for tiny hands who want to make their world a little bit bigger. It is fantastic because it is completely portable. You can take it with you. No need for a plug-in, no need for anything like that. Take it with you on any field trip, any outdoor time, and kids can magnify their world. But you can also put it on the little stand, and it is perfect for any science experiments you're doing at home at your kitchen table. So we love the STEM Kids Portable Microscope, and we're very excited to have them on as sponsors for this video. Let's talk about grade level and ages and maturity, because those all play a factor when it comes to deciding what level and book level you're going to get when it comes to purchasing curriculum for your kids. I know right now a lot of parents are starting to think about next year. They're starting to kind of formulate their plans. I know I am. I'm kind of just finalizing things, and I'll be doing a whole planning video series if you guys are interested in that coming up in a couple weeks. But for right now, a lot of parents are struggling, especially if they're coming out of the public school system, with what level do I get for my kids? What level do I get for math? What level do I get for English? What level do I get? And there's a lot of things that make it very difficult, and I can't tell you what level to get for your kids. But I can give you some ideas and give you some understanding as to how the systems work. And hopefully that'll help you feel encouraged to pick the right system for your kids. So first off, we have to talk about the public school system and how they determine what grade kids go into. And this is important for parents who are coming out of the public school system. It's also important for parents who have been homeschooling for a little while, or maybe pandemic schooling for a little while, and are planning on putting their kids back in the public school system. So here in Ontario, it is 100% determined by age. What grade your kids are going to is going to be determined by what year they were born. It has nothing to do with their abilities, with their levels, with any of that is going to be determined by their age. I know that is the case for, I'm pretty sure, most of Canada, if not all of it, and the vast majority of the United States. Kids are placed in their age appropriate grade. By age appropriate, I mean if they are 6, they are going into grade 1. If they are, 7, they're going into grade 2, and there's nothing that is going to make any difference in that. And that is not always the best system. I think we can all agree that we can see that is just not a great system, because that is a huge time gap. Just for regular, if your kids are in public school, that's a huge time gap. There are children who are born on January 1st, and they are in the same class as kids who are born on December 31st, for example, of that calendar year, and they are in the same grade and expected to be at the same grade level. And a year makes a huge difference, especially with children. They have their leaps and their bounds, their growth, and that is a really big age gap. Think about that when it goes to kindergarten. Like, for example, here in Ontario, kindergarten can start at age 4. You have to be 4 before December 31st. Okay? Which means your child could go into school and be in class with kids who have been 4 since January. And so I literally know people whose kids turned 4 on December 29th or 30th. And they were in school for several months while they were actually within their 3rd year of life. And to expect a child who is 3 and 3 for the first 4 months of school to be at the same emotional, mental, physical maturity level as a child who's been 4 for 9 months. It doesn't really make sense. But this is the system that public schools come up with to make things easy for them. And it is the system that most of North America has adopted when it comes to placing kids into grade levels. I think we can all agree as parents that kids have their own curves. Like, they all are growing on their own curve. For example, some kids learn to walk at 10 months old. My niece did. She was doing stairs unassisted, no hands, standing up, walking straight up and down sets of stairs by a year old. Was walking on solid ground at like 10 months. And then I have a friend whose son didn't walk until he was 18 months old. There's a huge span of like when kids are going to learn different skills, and every kid is different, and they're going to learn skills and be emotionally and mentally mature enough to learn certain skills at different points in time. Now, provided that there is no medical or neurological diversity issue that is perhaps making learning skills difficult, we can still say that that's a very normal thing. Like I said, some kids learn early, some kids learn late, some kids just need a little extra time. And just assuming that kids are going to be able to do that because they are a certain age, I think we can all agree that that just doesn't make sense. We need to be able to place kids according to their ability. And that's the great thing about homeschooling, is we can do that. And the ability to customize that to fit our kids and what the grade level they're going to be at is fantastic, especially if your child has something like a learning disability, ADHD, some other form of neurodiversity. Being able to match them, kids who for a variety of reasons might need extra time, might need some extra practice or learning extra skills to be successful. If they don't necessarily have all of that time, they're always going to be behind the curve when it comes to a standard class. And yes, schools do give IEPs and, special accommodations for those kids, and they should, and they have every right to have them. But it's when you don't have to be differentiated and like have to sit through a lesson you don't understand and then be given something that's more at your level, it just takes away that kind of awkwardness. It takes away some of that stigma. It takes away the wasted time, and you can just focus on their strengths and where they are at now and just build from there, right? And all of this, age level, we all assume that age level doesn't have anything like that. It's a ridiculous system. And once we're taking into account like neurodiversity, the kids have their own curves, and yet we put them in a system that doesn't accept that. I always talk about reading. Reading is one of those skills that people push so hard for kids to be able to read at a certain age, and there isn't a science to back that up. I tell people so many times that in most school settings, kids who are not reading full sentences by the end of grade 1 are behind. And what happens when kids are behind, we send them for intervention programs, they get extra homework, they get extra reading practice, they're forced to read or do activities that are repetitious even if they're not interested. And so it really makes reading more of a chore than making it fun. And the frustrating part for me as a teacher and a homeschooler is that the science doesn't back up early reading. I'll put a link to a couple articles below, but essentially studies have shown that there is no benefit for kids to learn reading early. And in fact, the window to learn how to read is actually a lot larger than what the school system will lead you to believe. Most kids, provided there is no neurodiversity issue or learning disability, most kids will learn to read with very minimal intervention between the ages of 6 and 10. But if your kid is not reading by the age of 6, you are considered behind, even though the psychology tells us and the science tells us and the studies tell us that it's actually like a 4-year window in which most children will learn to read. And then going beyond that, there's actually no benefit to early reading either. I know, shocking. The studies tell us that kids who learn to read later catch up and do just as well as the kids who learn to read early. So studies have shown that children who are tested at age 13 on their reading skills, there is no discernible difference between a kid who learned to read at 10 and a kid who learned to read at 5. By age 13, they've caught up. It's the same way that I talked about walking in this video. There's no discernible difference between my niece who learned to walk at 10 months and my friend's son who learned to walk at 18 months. At this point now, several years later, you can't tell. You would never know who learned to walk early. Reading is the same way. It is a skill that once learned, they can roll with it and they will catch up in all of the skills that they need to. Again, provided there is no neurological or learning disability or neurodiversity issue, right? But despite all of that, we do punish these kids in a sense because they end up with, like I said, extra homework, extra interventions. They have to miss certain classes, which, by the way, it's always the classes the kids like when they get interventions at school. It's always going to be art, it's always going to be science, it's always going to be gym. It's never going to be intervention during the subject that they are struggling with, which makes kids hate school even more. But I digress. But the whole reason I'm talking about all this is because I really want us to understand that we need to allow our kids to work at the level that they're at. Sometimes that means pulling them back a grade. Sometimes that means pushing them ahead a grade. And we can do that. We, as the parents, have this amazing ability when we're homeschooling to adjust our curriculum to match our kids and to match what is best for them. Sometimes, I would say a lot of time, there's going to be points in our lives where our kids are not going to match up with their grade level and their age, their maturity, their age level, and their grade level are not going to match up. And we as parents have to kind of decide what to do with that. Between a child's grade, their age, and their maturity level, we also have to take into account the fact that kids don't learn on an even level. Like, it's not a consistent level throughout. It's very much like this. It is a roller coaster of learning, and sometimes they're rushing through things, and sometimes things get a little bit slower and it takes them longer. They struggle with something and then they get it and they're off again. And as homeschoolers, we get to embrace that and know that our kids are not going to be penalized because it takes them a little bit longer to get something. But it also means we need to be ready to adjust to the timelines of our kids. So some kids are going to move at a much slower pace. Zoe, our youngest, tends to move at a slower pace. Right now, she is in her first year of kindergarten, and will be finishing that up in the next couple months. And she just kind of trucks along at a very slow pace. All year we've been working on letters, 1 letter a week, working on the sound of that letter, what that letter looks like, matching the capital to the lowercase. Out of the 20, I think we're at 24 letters that we've done this year so far, so we're almost done. She can probably identify maybe 4 pretty consistently, 3 of which are in her name. So maybe 5, 4 or 5. The rest, she has no idea what they are. But over the past year, she's gotten really good at looking at them, knowing if the capital and the lowercase match or not. That's a big thing for her. And she's gotten really good at tracing, holding her pencil properly, tracing, and drawing something without the tracing. So like, here's the letter I, coming over and drawing the letter I. She has been learning those skills, but has not picked up really hardly any letter skills. She just does. It's just, she's moving really slowly. But then sometimes kids pick up on another subject and they kind of start to take off. Zoe has been moving very slowly through her math workbook this year. And then the last couple weeks, probably 10 weeks, she's picked up on numbers and she's like identifying numbers, and she's right now working on number 9 or 10. I don't remember right now. But she's like, all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, I know what number that is. She's drawing more. She's understanding the concept of numbers. Sometimes kids kind of, like I said, she trucked pretty slowly and now she's kind of on an uphill right now. Will it come down? Probably. But she's just a little bit of a slower kid. She likes to kind of go at a little bit more of a leisurely pace. Then I got Alexi, who is on a different pace altogether. Alexi has done it all. She's gone really fast. We're slowing her down. She's just a different kid. And so I have to adjust her curriculum and what grade level and what book she's working at to fit her. When she was in kindergarten, her first year of kindergarten, she raced through every kindergarten math workbook we gave her because kid loves math. She loves numbers, shapes, measuring. It's her jam. So she raced through all of it. So her second year of kindergarten, she got a grade 1 book and she raced through that. Like, I think it was 6 months. She finished an entire grade. So we did what everybody in the homeschool community would recommend, was we got her a grade 2 workbook. So she started on grade 2 when she was only 5, when she was still at the kind of the tail end of kindergarten. And it slowed her down. She slowed down, and instead of like, she kind of became she plateaued on her speed a little bit. And instead of 6 months, it's taken her almost a whole year. So she went from grade 1 went from September to March, and then grade 2 went from March to March again. And it slowed her down. It was definitely much more at her pace. There was a lot more thinking that she had to do and slow herself down to understand the math, because it was getting into things that she just wasn't as confident in and wasn't as quick in. It was a much better level for her. She worked really well through it. She was very comfortable with it, very confident with it. But then we kind of started at the end coming up with some questions, because it's March, or it was March when she finished. The question was, what are we going to do for the rest of our like academic year? Because we still have like 3 months of work. What are we, 3 months of like our school year? What are we going to do? And typically a lot of homeschoolers would tell you just get the grade 3 and do the grade 3. But I had to take her maturity into consideration when it came into this point. Alexi just didn't have the mental and emotional maturity to move on to another grade. I noticed this because when it was coming into things like word problems, if it wasn't a single step word problem, she had a harder time with it. And if it was multiple word problems, like if there was 8 word problems to solve, that was a lot of work for her, because she had to incorporate more reading, she had to incorporate more number sense, she had to incorporate more logic into it. It was just getting to be a lot more. And knowing that grade 3 is like another step up, I made the decision that instead of giving her a grade 3 workbook, I headed to my local chapters and picked up like a $10 or $15 math workbook. Like, it's just a workbook. There's no teaching in it. It's just practice for grade 2. So the grade that she just completed. And so she's going to spend the next couple of months working through this much smaller, I think it's like 90 pages or 60 pages, 70, 80 pages of just math problems that are at the grade 2 level, but allowing her to have a chance to get really confident with that and really fill her time, get really confident at it before we move on to a level that she's just not mentally or emotionally ready for. And so between now and September, which is about 6 months, she's going to have time to kind of pick away at this grade 2 book, and it'll give her brain time to mature so that she'll have the mental capacity to do these harder questions. She'll have more problem solving skills. She'll have a bigger attention span. She'll be able to handle more steps, right? When it comes to doing the math problems that are going to be required of her when she moves on to the next grade level. So sometimes it's about going fast, sometimes it's about going slow, sometimes it's about just kind of repeating and building confidence, and giving kids time to reach the mental and emotional maturity that they need to reach. All this to say, and get to the question of like, how do I pick curriculum that is at my kid's grade level? It is a tricky question because there is no right answer. There is no formula where you say, take this kid and this age and this grade level and calculate this maturity and boom, you have an answer. Like there's no way of knowing that. There are things you can do to help pick curriculum that works for your kids. If you are struggling with what curriculum to look at, go to the curriculum company's original website. A lot of them have placement tests. I know a lot of people buy things, like I buy a lot through either Amazon or through like Learning House, which is a homeschool curriculum store. That's great. They often, it's a better price, or it's on sale, or the shipping is reduced, whatever. Those are great places to purchase from. But if you go to the company's original website, a lot of them do have a placement test where, you ask your kids questions, the kids take the test, and if they can complete section A and B, they're grade 2. If they complete section A, B, C, D, they're grade 3. And it'll tell you what level in their curriculum to be working at. It's a little bit easier if your kids are in kindergarten, because if they've always homeschooled, because you can just like start at kindergarten and just follow them, right? You do kindergarten, and when they're done, you can either give them a refresher to build some confidence, or you move on to the next grade level, right? It's a little bit easier in that sense. But if you're coming out of the public school system and you're trying to determine what curriculum level to get for your kids, it's a little bit trickier. So I would say if your kids are super confident and they're really doing great in a grade level, chances are most curriculums are going to be pretty close across the board grade level wise. There might be something here and there that differs. For example, your math curriculums might teach something in one grade lower or one grade higher than what your province teaches in. You might have something like that, but for the most part, they're very similar and they all learn things around the same time, even through like the United States. They're pretty close. But if your kids are confident, definitely you can try placement tests, and then whatever grade level they're at, try that. If your kids were struggling and they were having a really hard time with something, definitely consider dropping them down a level or a grade and see if you can build some confidence there. If possible, if your kids are struggling, I definitely recommend looking for curriculums that are leveled rather than graded. So like a level 1, 2, 3 rather than grade 1, 2, 3. It just plays with the kids' psychology, especially if they're coming out of the public school system. They have that system entrenched a little bit more, and so it feels not as good knowing that you're like supposed to be in grade 3 and you're doing grade 1 work. Like they know the difference, whereas sometimes people level up all the time. It's not a big deal. If you're with a curriculum that you really like and it is a grade book, either cover it with a sticker, remove it, whatever. A little psychology game. It does work though for a lot of kids. It just helps them build that confidence up without feeling like they're failures. But also I want to make people aware that there are a few curriculums out there that are more advanced. And that's why I do recommend, if you're curious and you're coming out of the public system, definitely check for placement tests. For example, I know Singapore math is a very popular math curriculum. I know some friends who use it and they really love it, but they've used it from kindergarten and moving on. I find from when I've seen it and used it that it tends to be 1 to 2 grade levels higher than what is in the public school system. So if you were to give a grade 5 student the Singapore math grade 5, there's a decent chance that it's going to be like stuff they've never seen before, or be like just way too hard for them. Definitely look for placement tests. Definitely be ready to drop a grade or a level if your kids are struggling. And sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error, right? You can only do what your kids can do, and sometimes it's not just like I said, it's not about their age, it's about their maturity. And so sometimes just asking them to do one page rather than a whole section or just a section of questions every day can really help kind of build that confidence and encourage them to keep going through something that's tricky when it comes to curriculum and if they're behind. Like I said, I wish I could tell you that there's this magical formula to pick the perfect curriculum level for your kids, but there's not, because there's so many things that go into that. Like I said, age, maturity, the leveling of curriculum, whether your children have different neurodiversities that you need to consider. So there's a lot of things that go into picking curriculum levels that are, it's not easy, but I'm hoping that you guys got at least a couple ideas of things to think about, things to consider, and some ideas on how to do that in a way that's going to be best for your kids. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video and you want to get more videos like this, you can definitely go down here and subscribe and then click the bell to get notifications when we put out a new video. Typically they're on Mondays, except for the past 2 weeks we've had COVID, so we haven't had a video. And then if you want to see how we handle curriculum and workbooks and the roller coaster of teaching kids to learn, you'll definitely want to follow me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Raising A to Z. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Say bye, Mac. Bye.